Thanks MR2 people for your interest in the AW11 trim saver tabs that I've designed here. I'm hoping that these will help some people out. So I wanted to just do a quick video of why I designed these things, kind of how they're intended to work, and give you some tips for best success if you did happen to buy a set of these from me and you want to try and fix your C-pillar trim. So just a quick disclaimer, you're doing this at your own will. So I know these things are hard to find, especially in like great condition. So just know that if you decide to try and repair this, you assume any responsibility for what may go wrong. But I believe that I put a kit together here that's going to give you a very, very high chance for success on repairing these pieces that might otherwise be broken, like mine are. So why I made these originally is I actually found a visor off of a parts car that was local to me that I wanted to put on my car because my car didn't come with one. And like many of you, I went to take the C-pillar trim off the back of my car, and many of the attachment points on the back actually broke off. So what I ended up doing at that point is trying to devise a way to actually save these pieces, because as we all know, there aren't any anymore. So what happened on mine is actually on the driver's side trim, I lost the bottom two fasteners. The top two look great still. Now, who knows how long they'll hold out? Probably not very long. And then on the passenger side, I lost the other two. So on the passenger side, the top two broke off, as you can see, which I'm sure you're all familiar with this. And the bottom two actually look pretty good. The problem that I had is the top one is one of the securing points for the visor. And I don't want this visor to come off and go flying down the highway. So I've had to figure out a way to attach this thing, because I really, out of all these, have to have these top two holes working. So what I came up with is these AW11 trim saver tabs. These are basically intended to replace the faulty, old, crusty connection points on the inside of these trim pieces. So just a couple notes here. This is not brand new trim. I'm not selling entire pieces. This is just a repair kit. So all I'm selling is these repair pieces to hopefully get yours functioning again. I'm not selling a brand new molded or injection molded, fiberglass, carbon fiber, whatever, sheet metal. I'm not selling trim pieces. I'm just trying to help you repair the ones that you may have laying around that are, otherwise in great shape like mine, but have broken connectors on them. And I think there's probably quite a few out there like that, and I think probably a lot of them could be saved. So that's why I came up with this idea. So just a couple quick notes before we start trying to install this thing. Stuff that you get with the kit, you're going to get 8 of these tabs, or I also sell them in groups of 4 if you just need to fix one side, but you will need 8 tabs to fix both sides. And then you also get an instruction sheet here that'll kind of walk you through what I'm doing in the video right now as well. Things that you'll need to buy or source on your own. Obviously, you're going to need 2 trim pieces. You're going to need the original fasteners that connect these things to the car. You're going to need some 180 grit sandpaper. A couple sheets should be plenty. You're going to need some flush cut pliers. Make sure you're getting flush cutting pliers, the ones that cut completely flat to a surface, like this. Don't use your standard side cutting pliers like we're all familiar with here. We're not talking about these guys. These don't cut completely flat to the surface because of their profile. So we're not talking about, like channel lock side cutting pliers. So you need actual flush cut pliers. They're really cheap. If you don't have them, get some. You're talking like $5. So flush cutting pliers, you'll need those. You'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the fasteners. And then the last thing, to attach these tabs, I have had fantastic luck with this black ABS cement. So this is just like they use for pipe fittings. I bought this at Home Depot. It costs like $3, I think. You don't need very much of it. Make sure you're getting ABS pipe cement though. Don't get PVC pipe cement. They're two totally different things. So this stuff seems to work great. I'll show you the durability here in a second on these prototype pieces I made of how strong this stuff is. But this is the only glue that I'm going to endorse for the use with this kit. If you want to try something else, that's kind of on your own. But this will work if you use this stuff, and it's cheap. So, if you mess it up trying some other kind of glue, I don't provide replacement tabs. I'll sell you some more, but I can't send you more tabs just because you used a different kind of glue. So if you want best luck and get it right the first time, go with this stuff. It works really well. So a couple other notes here before we actually start trying to put this thing together. There are unique positions for these things. So there's actually 3 different style of tabs in your kit. Tab 1 is the bottom ones, which are closest to the engine cover. So that's 1. Tab 2 and 3 are actually identical. So if you look at this little chart I made down at the bottom here of your instructions, 2 and 3 are the same. So you actually have 4 of those in your kit, 2 for each side. And then tab 4 is the third shape, and it's the one that goes all the way at the top. It's the one where your visor will connect. So you're going to find these probably all loose in a bag when you get them, if you buy them from me. And the idea, if you're trying to figure out which one is which, is you can basically take the side of these things and match them up to here, for instance, and figure out, you know, which one is which. So just sit them on top of there. You'll figure it out. So that guy's a number 1. For instance, if we look at like this one, this guy's a number 2 or number 3. And then very last, if we look at this one, this guy's a number 4. So this little tool down at the bottom is just a way you can figure out which one is which, but they do have unique positions. That's what this chart's trying to show you. So make sure you put the right one in the right spot. Otherwise, it's not going to mount up. Because what happens is these tabs all have different depths between here and here. So if you put the wrong one in the wrong spot, you're going to have either too much clearance and it's going to have slop, or not enough and you're not going to be able to get it to fit on there. The other thing you'll notice is tab number 1 all the way at the bottom looks like it has a lot of space, and it does for a reason, because if you look on the back of your car, you got to have room for this plastic piece to fit in there. So this guy here is what takes up some of that extra slop. So if it looks like there's more room in that one, there is, but it's because of this piece. It has to be able to fit on there. So just make sure that you put the right tab in the right position. So just to kind of show you one more thing here before we actually start working on fixing my existing trim pieces, I just want to show you a kind of a durability demonstration. So these are my prototypes over here, these ugly orange ones. These actually came off of the same car that I got the visor from, but these trim pieces were pretty much completely wrecked when I bought them. And I bought them just knowing that I would probably use them just for testing stuff, and I didn't have to worry about ruining my good ones over here. So these are my prototypes, and this one actually is, you know, completely functional. It's just ugly, so I will never use it. It's broken down here at the bottom in like one other spot, and the weather stripping's missing. But this one you can see has like been through the ringer, obviously. So I've done all kinds of different testing on it. But this one I hit hard enough actually that it cracked the plastic on the back as I was testing the glue. But kind of interesting is no matter where I hit this thing, it always broke in a different spot than the glue, and it actually breaks around it. So you can see the tab is like right here. This glue is strong enough that it's actually holding the C-pillar trim together behind there. And I hit this thing really, really hard, just trying to make sure that these tabs were never coming out of there. There's another one I glued in right here, and you can see where it broke around that. So I'm going to kind of pause the camera here and just set up a quick demonstration. I'm going to hit one of these with this little hammer just to kind of show you how tough these things are. But you know, basically what you can deduce from this, I think, is that if anything breaks, it's not going to be the tabs on the back anymore. It's going to be some other place on your trim. But I'm going to see if I can pause this and just show you a quick demo here to hopefully make you a believer that these things actually will hold together. All right, so here's a short demo, hopefully showing you kind of how strong this glue is and that these tabs are not going to come out. So I could continue hitting this even harder, but it's basically what you'll find as you hit this. You guys probably won't do this, but if you start hitting this thing harder and harder, basically what happens is this, that these things will actually separate, and this glue is strong enough that it'll actually break around the trim bosses. So these things they're not going to come out. And when this broke out, I was actually hitting the tabs, and it was such a strong connection that it broke the rest of the trim and the tabs stayed connected. So, you know, your trim is still brittle. It's still likely to crack, but it's not going to crack where these are connected. That's going to be like your last failure point. So that hopefully should show you how strong these things are, that they are not, you know, they're not coming out of there. So it'll continue to break as I hit this thing, obviously, because this is a really, really old crusty piece, but they're not coming out of there. So to finish up here, I just want to give you some tips on actually installing these things. So what you want to do starting out is obviously take the trim off your car. Any of the broken pieces like this, you want to take your flush cut pliers and you're going to try and trim off any of this broken stuff as flat as you can with the inside of your trim piece right here. And from my experience, this stuff breaks off kind of on its own, and it sort of breaks right there at the surface anyway. You can decide how aggressive you want to get when you're trying to cut that off, but usually your flush cut pliers will take that off pretty close to the surface. And when you get done, you want it to look like this. So you should have something that looks sort of like that. Nice flat surface. That one may need a little bit more, but what you want to do then is come back with your 180 grit sandpaper and just kind of smooth this out. It doesn't have to be like perfectly flat like you're doing body work. You really just want to get rid of the high spots. So like on this one, I want to knock off kind of that lip that's closest to us there. This one down here looks good. It's ready to go. So flush cut pliers first, trim off the heavy stuff, then come back with your 180 grit sandpaper and just knock down the high points to where it sits flat. And what you can do at that point is take your trim saver tabs and start to sit them in there and kind of make sure that they sit flat the way that you want them to. So you can take them and kind of put them in there and, you know, start to test fit them. If I can do this one-handed here. You can start to kind of see if they're sitting flat in there or not. So once you're happy with the fitment, the next thing you probably want to start to do is do what I call sighting through the holes. And what I'm saying by that is you want to look at these perpendicular. So make sure you're not looking at these at a weird angle like this. That you want to try and look directly straight into that hole and just get a feel for where this piece is going to sit. And you can figure out, you know, how far you need to move it left to right or forward or backwards and kind of where it's going to sit at. The other thing you'll see is pieces 2, 3, and 4 have sort of a curve on them. And that curve right there on the back is made to sit sort of on this really, really gradual curve right here on the outside of this piece. So you'll see when you sit them on there how many times I, you know, tested these prototypes to try and make sure that it just barely overlaps that curve the way that it's supposed to. So that's kind of why those pieces are curved. It's because of this edge right here that goes all the way down and kind of wraps around there. So test fit the pieces before you glue them. Make sure you kind of figure out where they're supposed to sit, where they go, get a feel for it. Then what you want to do is take your ABS cement. Again, make sure it's ABS, not PVC. You're going to take that and just put a light coating in there. It doesn't take tons. You do want to make sure you cover the surfaces. So you're just going to put some ABS glue in there. And you can kind of see these prototypes I did, sort of how I coated them. So just a good light coating all around. And then you can do a coating on the back of the tab also. So just hit both surfaces, and then you're just going to put it in place. And when you put it in place, the next thing you want to do is make sure that you center it upright. And that's kind of what I'm trying to show you here, is make sure that you use the original hardware to center these things inside the openings. That your original screws right here fit inside these openings really nicely. And if you drop them in there, you can kind of use these to center the thing up. You do have some movement here, so you want to make sure that you keep it as centered as possible. But you can actually take that and thread it into the back of the new tabs. So what I like to do when I'm gluing these things in is go ahead and, you know, put glue on both surfaces, stick the tab in there so it's kind of where you want it, and then to sort of center it up, you know, take your Phillips head screwdriver, you're going to crank it down in there, and this thing's not going to be set up yet. I mean, you're going to have probably, I don't know, 30 to 40 seconds to do this before it really starts to set, and you're going to look when you tighten this screw down, you want to get it just to where it barely starts to contact the surface. You don't want to over tighten this while you're waiting for the glue to dry, because what will happen is if you over tighten this screw, it'll actually lift your tab up out of the glue, and it won't even be sitting on the surface that you're trying to glue it to. So you got to make sure that you do it with a very, very light touch when you're tightening this down. You don't have to tighten it down all the way. You just want to tighten it enough that it sits inside this counter bore on this plastic piece, so you can kind of do the back and forth location thing. But don't tighten it down too much or it'll lift the tab right up out of the glue, and then you're kind of stuck. So just to kind of show you, here's one that I centered up. You don't have to be like beautifully perfect, but I got this one pretty close. This one does mount on the car. Everything centers up nicely. But you can use your original hardware to locate those things, and that's what I'm trying to show you in the picture right here. So get it as centered as you can, but don't tighten it down too much. Then kind of finally what you want to do is, once you get those glued in there, let them sit for probably about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes maybe, just where that glue has had a good chance to set up. And then you can actually take these screws back out if you want to, just to make sure they don't get stuck in there. So I was worried about them getting glued in there. So I actually, after about 15 minutes, took mine back out. If you start to take these out and you see the trim piece moving, or the tabs moving, stop, let it sit for another 10 minutes maybe, 5 minutes, then come back and try and take them out again. After you get the screws taken out, you do, as I mentioned in the instructions, make time for this to sit for a full 24 hours. That I tested these over, on these different pieces I tried like an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. Even after a couple of hours, the glue is still a little bit tacky, and it really doesn't set up to full strength until about 24 hours. So to make sure you don't have to redo this or that you don't mess something up, get them where they're stuck down in there, and then just leave it for a whole day. Don't even touch it. And then come back and it'll be totally cured and you'll be good to go. Finally, one quick little note. If for some reason you don't get these perfectly aligned and your holes are a little bit off, you do have the option, because of the way I designed these, you can open these holes up just a little bit on these sheet metal flanges. So there's not a lot of room for error when you put these on here. You can, if you need to, come in here with a little bit bigger drill bit and open these up just a little bit. If you sit this on here, for instance, like mine, let me pause this really quick and I'll actually show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so when I actually put this on here, and again, this is my lousy piece, that's just a test piece, but if you put those on there and you notice for some reason that the holes are not matched up, you can slide this around, obviously, you can push on it. If you don't get these centered up good enough where the screws won't go in, you can open these sheet metal holes up just a little bit, maybe a 1/16 or so of extra size, just to open them up, but they should be really, really, really close. So you can't really drill the holes out on the factory tabs because there's not enough of a footprint on there, but I made these like 1 inch wide, so you have lots of surface area on there, and really it doesn't matter if that sheet metal hole is bigger, because the tabs are still going to catch it. So if you compare these to the standard tabs on my other trim pieces, these standard tabs are a lot smaller, and if you drill those holes out bigger, they may actually just like poke through the holes in the sheet metal. So if you mess up on the alignment a little bit and you're off by a 1/16 of an inch, you can open those holes up and probably be okay. So just a note, if you do that though, make sure you put a little bit of paint on those holes after you drill through them so you don't get rust forming. So that's kind of all I've got for you guys on tips for success here. So I'm actually going to work on doing my good trim pieces here, but good luck. Hope this works out for you. I've had good luck with it and excited to get this thing fixed so I can actually get my visor put on here. This whole thing has taken me probably like 2 weeks, or maybe even longer than that. I've made 50 prototypes of these little plastic pieces, so I've got hours and hours and hours in these things, which they look really simple, but they're tricky to measure and hard to figure out. So good luck. If you guys have questions, you can email me. I'll try and help you out, but hope this saves some C-pillar trims and maybe we can make our cars look a little bit nicer. So good luck.